These revolutionary ideas that the Founding Fathers placed in our documents came from a primary source. A primary source was the Bible.
Wow.
You say, oh, no, that's not possible. The Bible's not political. Time out. Let's do a little historical analysis here.
Okay.
What you have is we have in American history thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of written documents. Previous generations did on paper what we do with cameras and tapes and VCRs. They wrote everything down. They all kept diaries and memoirs, and George Washington has 100 volumes of writings, and John Adams has 33, and Jefferson has 60. They wrote it all down. One of the things they kept written records of was sermons, because unlike today, sermons back then were all written. You didn't just stand up in the pulpit and preach a sermon. You stood up in the pulpit and you read a sermon. It was not until the Second Great Awakening that we started having extemporary kind of sermons where you would actually preach a sermon without having it written out first.
Wow.
So we have tens of thousands of written sermons out of the colonial times. You will find there is nothing covered in the Declaration of Independence that had not already been dealt with in the pulpit before 1763.
Who are some of those people?
Wow.
Well, a great example. Take the Declaration of Independence. All these ideas, the consent of the governed and taxation without representation, all these things that came out in the Declaration, you can track so many of them back to the Rev John Wise. The Rev John Wise is a name we never hear about today. Now, Clinton Roster is an award-winning American historian. He wrote a book called The Seed Time of the Republic.
Wow.
What are the ideas that birthed the revolution? He tracked it back to 6 individuals. He considered these 6 individuals to be the greatest intellectual influence on American independence. Of the 6 individuals, 2 were political folks and 4 were preachers of the gospel. One of the preachers he points to is the Rev John Wise. Now, this is the work from Rev John Wise. This is his work from 1710 and 1717, two works that he has here. Reverend Wise is a preacher in Massachusetts, and by 1687, he had already shown out of the Bible that taxation without representation was tyranny. He had already shown and preached out of the Bible that the consent of the governed is the basis of biblical government. He had already shown out of the Bible that all men are created equal, they're endowed by their Creator with certain rights. Now, that sounds like things in the Declaration. Yeah, exactly. It was preached in the pulpit by the Rev John Wise. This particular edition of his works that I'm holding here is from 1772. And what makes this significant is in 1772 they reprinted his works. Who reprinted it? Well, you can take folks like Ebenezer Dorr. Ebenezer Dorr is the guy who rode with Paul Revere to sound the alarm. You can take the guy who was head of the Boston Tea Party. He's the guy who reprinted this book. Artemus Ward, who was the first commander-in-chief before George Washington was appointed as commander-in-chief, he reprinted this book. You find the guys who reprinted the 1772 book were the guys who led the American Revolution. When this book came out in 1772, it sold out so fast they did another quick reprinting. This went to all the patriots. It renewed their thinking. Oh yeah, that's right. Taxation without representation is tyranny. The consent of the government came right out of those sermons. And we used to know that.